Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hi, and welcome, everyone. I am so excited to have meditation guru, martial arts instructor, and author Jeff Patterson with us today. Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have Jeff on to talk all things meditative and martial arts. This is going to be really interesting because we have not had anyone who is well-versed in the martial arts on the podcast, and I am so interested in his world. I'm going to read a little bit about Jeff, and then we'll get right into the questions. Jeff Patterson has spent more than 36 years practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts. He is the founder of Northwest Fighting Arts, Portland Tai Chi Academy, and the Yielding Warrior, where he helps people develop practical tools for greater resilience, clarity, and well-being through meditation, breath work, movement, and mindful living. Drawing from decades of experience working with thousands of students around the world, Jeff developed the Yielding Warrior method, an approach that goes beyond traditional meditation by integrating ritual, active, and philosophical practices into a personalized and sustainable daily routine. His work centers on what he calls an evolving life practice, a way of using meditation not simply as a technique, but as a lifelong framework for personal growth, emotional resilience, and optimal performance. Jeff is the author of several books, including The Yielding Warrior, and has produced hundreds of instructional videos designed to make meditation and the meditative arts practical, accessible, and relevant to everyday life. Jeff, welcome.
Hey, thanks.
You're awesome. So I just wanted to say that first and foremost, I have been practicing meditation myself since about 2012, and it has completely changed my life. I also think it's changed my nervous system, and it's changed how I relate to the world. I love this practice. I want to know what got you into meditation and the martial arts. Give me a little of your history.
Yeah, well, as a young child, I was always interested in the martial arts, but I never really had the opportunity to start training. And so as a teenager, when I got my first job, one of the first things I did was go down to the local martial arts studio and start a membership. And I just clicked with it. I really liked the training. I stuck with it. And then I joined the Marine Corps. And I continued training through the Marine Corps. And then when I moved up to Portland after the Marines to go to college, I got into Western boxing, which I really liked the thrill of it. It was very challenging to me and something that kind of pushed me outside my comfort zone. And I was at this boxing gym here in Portland that's only a few blocks, or used to be a few blocks here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, for those of you that aren't familiar with them, they're not like your traditional fitness style class where you have an instructor leading a group of students. Usually there's 4 or 5 coaches running around, and each one of those coaches might have a handful of fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of the coaches at the gym was a very reputable coach and somebody who I wanted to get to spend some time with, but he wasn't looking to take on any new fighters and really didn't seem to have the time for me. And so I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there. I'd work very hard and try to get him to notice me. And after following him around for about 3 or 4 months, he finally started giving me some tips and helping me out a little bit. And he said something to me after about 2 or 3 weeks that changed my life forever, in that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And here I was, this 19-year-old kid who didn't know much of anything, thinking, how, isn't that for old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And I had a lot of respect for him, and I knew he was trying to help me. And so I decided to take on the practice. And what I found was not only did it help me in the ring, but it started changing my life in so many different ways. And from that point on, I was pretty hooked, and it's been something that's been a big part of my life ever since. And through the years, running my academy now for 32 years, I've been very fortunate to have thousands of students come through the school, and
Mm.
I've literally heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives through the years. And that's what makes me so passionate about trying to get the word out there and share it with people and help others take on the practice. And so that's kind of my life's mission now.
Well, he said it would change the way you boxed, and I would love to know how. How did it change once you started to practice? What started to change in you?
Yeah, the meditation is so important with mindset and mind body connection. And if you look at any athletics today, across the board, from football players, basketball players, you'll see professional athletes in many different fields taking on the meditative arts because it helps them perform at a higher level. Even famous coaches like Phil Jackson was having, the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers practice meditation and Tai Chi because he knew that it would help them perform at a higher level. And here you have, the best basketball players in the world, and they're practicing meditation, and so it's the way that it does that, and it's many different directions. When you take on a meditation practice, there's 5 main paths of a meditation journey. There's what I call kind of the performance or the physical side, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. Now, the performance side, which is what's very helpful for athletes, it helps them learn how to, one, be more rooted, so they're solid in their feet and they can respond instead of react. Because if you think about, anytime we hold tension in the body, in order to move, we have to let go of that tension to respond. But if we're already relaxed and we're rooted and we're fluid, now we can just kind of act in real time. And you'll hear a lot of athletes refer to this term called the flow state. I believe with a meditation practice, we can help reach that flow state much easier because it helps us get all of the foundational building blocks of what it takes to reach those states of flow through a meditation practice. And so while it's a very complex question and there's a lot of little details that kind of go into it, that's a basic idea of it.
Definitely. And I've done a lot of research in this area as a psychologist and as a dietitian. And meditation does so many things for us. Yes, getting us into the flow state. And I think if people don't really understand, or maybe they've never been in that, it's that kind of where you just, time disappears and you're just immersed in something that is pleasurable, that is, appealing on a sensory basis. And meditation certainly helps us achieve better states of mindfulness, which is what he's talking about, by responding rather than reacting, of being in your environment, but not necessarily manipulating it, being a part of the environment and going with the environment. And that helps you to get into the flow. Also helps you multitask. It actually increases the fibers between the two hemispheres in the corpus callosum. It increases compassion and empathy. There's just so many amazing benefits to meditation. So you describe meditation as an evolving life practice rather than something we do for a few minutes each day. Tell us what you mean by that, and how did this philosophy develop throughout your journey?
Well, it changed through just doing the practice every day and making it part of my life. I mentioned that my old boxing coach got me into meditation, and one of the things that he told me early on was, you need to do this every day. And so The last thing I wanted to do was to go to the boxing gym and have them ask me if I did my practice and have to tell them no. So in the beginning, I got off to a pretty strong habit in that I was doing this every day, even though in the beginning, I didn't really understand why. And through the years, by developing this habit, I noticed that I started reaching different realizations and different practices and noticing how it started to shift and started to change what I did with my time. And I realized that there's no one size fits all when it comes to a meditation journey, and that you're going to use movement practices, still meditations from sitting practices, standing meditations, walking meditations, breathwork practices, studying philosophical concepts that are going to help us down any one of those 5 paths that I mentioned earlier. And it's going to help you narrow down that focus, whether it's for performance or the therapeutic benefits or the spiritual benefits. And we're going to pick different things that help us down that path. And as we evolve and get to different levels of realization, that's going to change as well. And so, I've personally been studying the meditative arts now for 37 years, and I'm still just a student learning all the time. I'm not the master by any means. And that's one of the things that I really love about this practice is that it is extremely deep. And when you say the evolving life practice, I say that in that you can't just follow an app and do a meditation practice. You need to have a strategy behind it, have a guide, have somebody there to help you out. And so you can really get the most out of your time.
Well, that's a really good question, I guess, for listeners who are like, what? Where do I start? Do I actually have to have a guide? And I'll just briefly say that I agree. It has to be, well, it doesn't have to be, it can be an evolving practice. I think it eventually just turns into that once you do start. But for me, I started when I was in my nutritional science grad school, and I was stressed out of my mind. And I knew that I needed to get a handle of my anxiety. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to last through that or my doctoral program. And so I just developed just 30 minutes where I just sat and listened. Well, actually, I would lay down because I just needed to lie down and listen to a piece of music just to free myself from my anxiety. And it has evolved since then to be so much more than that. It's been a way for me to get to know myself, the way to access my intuition, and the way to really kind of understand higher levels of consciousness. So I think it evolves and it grows. But if somebody was just brand new to it, where do you suggest that they just start, even if it's something small?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And one of the biggest challenges that I've faced in my 32 years of teaching is how can I help new students figure out the benefits of the practice so they make it part of their life and they really see what, these arts have to offer them. And so I've tried many things through the years, and what I've narrowed it down to so far, and again, this is always changing, but I've come up to what I call the 3 considerations. And I think if you spend a little bit of time in these 3 areas before you take on a practice, it'll highly improve the chances of you being successful with the practice. And the first one is thinking about what is it that's drawing you to the practice? Why do you want to take on the training? Is it because you want to improve your performance on the field, or maybe you're dealing with stress and anxiety, or maybe you want to be healthy into your later years to watch your grandkids grow up? Whatever that is for you. And then once you have a good idea of that, then think of 10 or 20 things that will positively change in your life by having this habit in your life. And this builds depth and quality of your why and reasons for doing it. And then I like them to flip the coin and think of 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if they don't do this and follow through with it. Because, we all have those days where the alarm goes off and it's time to get up and go do our practice. We want to hit the snooze button. But if you look at this practice as something that you get to do. And you're so fortunate to have this opportunity, to have this in your life and realize all the positive changes that are going to come from it. When that alarm goes off, you get excited about getting up to train rather than looking at it as a chore. Now, once we have that reason behind it, then the next thing is approaching the practice with the understanding that you need to be consistent. And this is one of the most important things with the meditation practice, and that it can't be something that you do when you get stressed out or when you need it. I have people all the time ask me, I'm getting ready for the big game, or if I have a panic attack, what should I do? And while there are things that we can do in those situations, but if you don't have the groundwork and you don't put in the thousands of repetitions before that moment happens, those things are not going to work very well. And so it's laying that foundation. There's this old story that I really enjoy. It's about the stonecutter who's very famous, and everybody just, anytime they see any of his work, they know it's his because it's so detailed and unique. Well, because of this, he'll have people from all around the country come to study with him and live with him for a few years at a time to learn the trade. Well, every morning, this guy would go down to the river and he would meditate first thing. One day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he has this profound vision of this big 6-foot tall, mystical Chinese jade dragon. And he's so taken by this vision that he just knows this has to be his next project. So he spends the next few months looking all around for this perfect stone for his new creation. Finally, when he finds it, he brings it back to his place, and he spends the next period of time just sitting with the stone, studying it, feeling the energy, and trying to envision how this dragon's going to soon appear out of the stone. Finally, when he starts working on the stone, he carefully places his chisel on the backside of the stone and starts tapping away with his hammer, hundreds, if not thousands of times to the same place. A few days go by and nothing. A few more days go by. One of his apprentices who was watching him started second guessing him, thinking, why doesn't he try something else? That's not working. A few more days went by and 1,000 more taps to the stone. And finally, this big 3-foot section of the stone separated and created this smooth, slightly curved line that was soon to be part of the dragon's back. And his apprentice asked, how did you know that that strike was going to break the stone? And the stonecutter replied, it wasn't that strike that broke the stone. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the stone. And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, but I've been watching you and there was no change, not even a crack. Why keep doing the same thing over and over? And the stonecutter got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, each strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface. And not only was the stone being transformed, so was the one who wields the hammer. And the reason why I enjoy this story is that this is so closely related to the meditative arts, in that through our consistent effort, we're laying the foundation to reap the fruits of our efforts for the rest of our life. And so approaching this practice with the understanding that we need to have that consistency in our practice. And then third is the understanding that we need to have a guide. I've mentioned I've been teaching now for 32 years. I've seen so many people that have been self-taught in the meditative arts, and sometimes they'll come in here and they've been training for 10, 15 years. And when you watch them, they're at the most basic level. And sometimes they're very disciplined. They might train every day and have this work ethic that's very impressive, but they're barely scratching the surface on their practice. And so, our lives are short. Your time is valuable. Find somebody to help you navigate the waters, because, if you look on YouTube, there's a million videos out teaching you this breathing strategy and this meditation practice and this movement practice, and trying to navigate that with an uneducated eye and not really know what they're all for or why they're doing the practice. You could spend years just kind of going down a rabbit hole and never really getting any depth in your practice. And so if If you take time to think about those three areas before you start your journey, I think that's one of the biggest things that will help a new practitioner coming to the meditative arts.
Absolutely. And if I can add something on the psychology end, habits, which is what we're talking about, it's a behavior you would perform repetitively for a good amount of time. Usually, our adoption, when we think about doing something new, we think about kind of all or nothing. Like, I got to just go all in and I'm going to do an hour a day. And for a lot of people, that's not sustainable. And I think it's really important to look at new habits in a much smaller, tinier way. And if you can even just develop a habit that's, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, as long as it's something that you can do every single day and it's not going to be difficult for you. And then you give yourself a little, kind of positive reinforcement afterwards. And you also attach to something you normally do at the same time every day. You're more likely to build that as a habit and not necessarily burn out by trying to take on too much too soon. But I love his suggestion as well. It's about finding someone that you can follow. And I would certainly recommend Jeff as being somebody you can follow who might teach you and guide you into the way. So let's talk a little bit more about your work. And you introduce three types of meditation: ritual, active, and philosophical. Can you explain each of these and why it's so important to understand the difference?
Yeah, and this kind of fits in with what you were just talking about with habits really well, in that, the ritual practice is kind of the core of a meditation practice. And it could be a movement practice, a sitting practice, a breath work training, or series of techniques, or many different things we can have in this ritual session. But it's basically a time that we set aside every day, and we do this consistently. Active practices are also things that we do on a regular daily basis, but they're shorter time periods. They can be anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. And they're just a way to kind of recheck in, because, it's so easy to get caught up at your computer and, you're let 3 hours go by and nothing changed, where with reset practices, you can do them every 60 minutes, every 90 minutes. And it's just a way to tap back into our breath and our physical posture and our emotional state and recognize these things throughout the day. And so with new students, I always recommend that maybe they set a timer on their phone where it goes off every 60 or 90 minutes. And then they just do, 10 breaths, or maybe a soft movement meditation for 2 minutes, something to just kind of recheck into the body, make that mind body connection, be present in the moment, stop looking at the screens for a minute, and integrate these with your ritual practice. And you'll notice that now it starts to become a way of life and something that you're living all day, every day, and less of a hobby that we're doing once in a while. And this is a way that will deepen our ritual practices, because now we have all these daily resets that we're doing throughout the day. And then the philosophical side can be used in both our ritual practices and our reset practices. And this has always been kind of one of my passions in the meditative arts, and that the reason why I'm so drawn to the philosophical side of the training is that it opens up your peripheral vision so you can see things from multiple angles and helps you be more strategic. And it's very powerful to kind of add this into the training. And so with those three pillars of the practice, they're like the foundation of our journey, and they're always changing. You might have 4 or 5 different movement practices that you're doing, some sitting practices, some standing meditation, breathwork strategies that we're utilizing in our ritual time, and then also in our active practices. And with reset practices, one of the interesting things with that is that, we're always through the day going through different physical, mental, and emotional states throughout the day. These reset practices are often used to help regulate those states. And when we start feeling depleted, we can use those to help energize us. Or if we start feeling stressed, we can use those to help find that balance and that root. And so this is all kind of part of your program or your individual kind of vision of the practice. And utilizing these three pillars is very helpful with your meditation journey.
Oh, I love that. I do love the ritual aspect of it. I do love, and I encourage my clients too, to have their, kind of mindful check-in, just like you encourage your students. I think it's so important for us to just start to increase our awareness during the day. And I think that those check-ins do that. And then to also ground it into a why. Why are we doing this? What is our personal philosophy? What are we trying to change, or what are we trying to become more of, or come back to? And I think that really does encompass everything that you could possibly bring in as far as meditation into just your daily practice. There's so many more questions I have. I could sit in front of you all day, I swear to God. I think you just have this amazing, calming presence. I think this is probably the most calm I've ever felt in front of a guest. So you have this incredible energy about you, and I can't wait to ask you some more questions. Will you come back and join me for the second half?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for the second half of this illuminating conversation with meditation teacher and Yielding Warrior founder, Jeff Patterson. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Tune in next time and evolve with us.